Hi guys. I figured it was time to crack on with some scenery, and as this layout is much larger than Corris, I need to tackle it in sections, and I thought that I would work my way down from the top. But before I start that, I need to correct something that's been bugging me since I did it, the backscene. When I originally applied the backscene, I did a bad job. The joins were poor and I got creases in it. Because of this, I knew that I'd replace it at some point. So when I worked on the layout, I didn't bother masking it off, which led to paint overspray and sculptor mold getting all over it. Anyway, it's time to change it. They're attached by screws, so it's nice and easy to remove them and add them back on again wherever I need to do so. And it's such a simple job, which means that I do very little damage as I remove them. Yes, apart from the lighting, which I manage to break off their supports every single time. With the backboard on the floor, I can begin to rip off the backscene. I thought that this would be a tricky and messy job, since it was when I did it on Talyllyn Wharf when I replaced it on that. But it pretty much pulled off in a single piece, with no residue or stickiness on the backboard. And with the old one off and in the bin, where it belongs, the replacement is laid out. I've gone for the same scene, an overcast sky. Backscenes make a huge difference to the overall atmosphere of the layout, and I'm looking for that feeling that it's about to rain at any minute. These premium ID backscenes are self-adhesive, so once it's been laid up straight on the backboards, the backing can be removed and it's slowly pulled from underneath it. As I'm pulling this away, I'm rubbing the front flat to remove any creases or bubbles as I go. I'm using a plastic bracket to do this as it's got soft round edges, so won't tear the paper. But after a bit, I abandon it and just use my hand. Just make sure your hands are clean and dry if you do this, as you'll easily mark the photo. When I get to the edge of the backboard, I use a new sharp knife and a ruler and carefully cut off the remains. In the past, I've just folded it around the back, but it always just peels off and looks messy. So it's best to get a clean cut now. The second layer to the backscene are some photos that I took in Nantgwernel not long ago. This obviously is going to look strange at the moment, but once the scenery's in, it should be quite hard to see it, and it'll just give hints that the ravine continues up the valley. I need to make sure that I blend the top of this photo with the trees to mask the obvious join. This is just getting stuck on with Pritt Stick, as it's a dry glue as opposed to PVA. It won't soak or tear the photo. With the backboards back on the layout, I can start the scenery. But this time I'll protect the backscene before doing any work in front of it. This is actually the backing that came off the new backscene, and I'm sliding it down between the layout and the backscene itself, which should protect it from my messy work. The layout scenery will be built up in a number of layers, and the first of these is a simple coat of brown paint. I should have liked to have used my lovely brown earth for this, for obvious reasons. But my local DIY shop where I originally found that paint was out of stock. Probably because the colour is heaps good. So instead I've mixed up this from other colours. It's similar, but the colour itself doesn't really matter. All I'm using it for is to mask the glare in white below. So if the scenery goes on and misses a spot, it won't ruin the illusion. It's actually quite hard to paint pure paint onto this sculptor mold stuff due to the rough finish it gives. So at this point I've watered it down a tad. You can see the evidence of that when the paint's dry, as it's dropped away from the peaks and left them lighter than in the deeper patches. To go around the tighter spots like round the rocks, I've swapped to a smaller paintbrush, for finesse. And when I'm talking about finesse, ignore where I've got brown paint all over the rocks. To be fair, that was actually intentional, as I'm planning to put scenery in those places later on. Well, that's half the layout now brown, and I'll have to agree with a friend's comment on this. The brown has actually changed the look of the layout, which is a good thing, I think. Even if it is just a base layer. Still, it's progress. I've left the paint to dry for an hour, and at this point, by the way, Wales is currently about 27 degrees outside, so I can begin with a second layer. Dirt. You may have seen me use dirt on Corris, and it worked well for a base on the main scenery, so I thought I'd do it again. And when I say dirt, I don't mean soil dug up from the garden, I mean dirt swept off the driveway and sieved. I'm painting on PVA in sections, and that's due to the glue drying really quickly in the heat. If it was a damp winter day, I'd probably have done the whole top half in one hit. But it's not, and I'm sweating, which I don't like. I'm applying the dirt through a cute little sieve that I found in a local general shop. They must have designed this thing for sieving dirt on 009 layouts, as there's no way it would be useful in a kitchen environment. Unless you're making like mini cupcakes or something, I guess. No, it's definitely for dirt. Checking in now, and the bottom half is brown, and the top half is now dirt. Once the glue was dry, or my patience ran out waiting for it to dry, can't remember which one it was in the end, I brushed the loose dirt off, and collected it to reuse. That's a lie as well actually, I just hoovered it off as I've got loads of it. But it sounds more professional if I say I've reused it. I then attempted to replicate the lumps of moss that grows on the rock faces. I have attempted it this week, but as you'll see later, it just doesn't look any good. So since this video, I ripped it off, and currently looking for a more convincing way to do it. How I did it this time was to use that clump flock stuff that you see that doesn't seem to be useful for anything, and as such I've had it in my cupboard for many years. It's funny, even at this point when I'm just starting to add it on, I knew that this wasn't going to work. But that's modelling for you, you know. And I've used this video to show you that even I, demigod George Williamson of 009 modelling, gets things wrong. The biggest issue I have with this at the moment is the colouring, so I decided to repaint it. But I need to wait for yet more glue to dry before I do it, so in the meantime, I'll crack on with the unkept bracken and general green bits along the trackside. I did say at the start of the video that I'd be working top down, but as you've most likely noticed, I'm actually concentrating on the rock areas and the trackside now. It'll all get done at some point. I'm stippling glue along the trackside and then applying short 1 to 3mm fibres through my broken knock applicator. Again, ignore the colouring of this, I'm just after the shortness of this grass. Before the glue has time to dry, I'll vacuum it up. Not hoover it, because that's the brand. This should encourage the fibres to stand up on their end. It didn't actually work that well this time, but that's all I can do until I get a new applicator. To fix the grass colours, I'll airbrush them as I did on the awdry challenge. I'm not sure why it looks so bad here, because it looked really good in the bottle. That's why I chose that colour for the grass, but it just looks terrible. So after that was applied, I went straight over it with another colour. This looks much more grassy, so I'm happy finally. The funny thing is that this is the same colour that's on the mossy station roof, but it looks so different applied in this way. Anyway, it looks like a natural colour. I also didn't film it, but I did add some fine flocking over the top of this layer later on. And to try and revive that rubbish mossy clump, I did use the same slimy green on that as well. And no, this didn't make me feel any better about it. There's plenty more to add to the rock, such as individual plants and the like, but it just looks bad now. For the general plants, I'm using the same technique as on Corris, and that means polyfibre. I haven't got any spray glue at the moment, so I'm using fancy hairspray. I will say that this does stick the polyfibre, but it just needs a bit more time to fully set. What it does do though, is fill the room with a very glamorous scent, unlike the spray glue. Although I'm sure that using this stuff this close, I probably look like the girl out of Something About Mary when I finished. When the polyfibers are in place, it gets another whiff of hairspray, and then I can begin to add the leaf scatters. The first two colours are similar to Corris as well, with a darker green over the whole bush, and then a lighter green on top for highlights. The only difference is that I'll add more dead leaves around the bottoms. This is blending the scenery that I've just put down into the ballasted areas as well. I am getting it over the plants here, but I later vacuumed it off when I realised that the plants are still pretty green in October, with the dead leaves on the ground around them. But I guess that'll be it until I get hold of some more detailed plant products. I've got my eye on a paper laser cut fern that might work well. Probably going to work out quite expensive though. As I've said, I'm not happy at all with the rock face. In fact, without sounding big-headed, this is the first update I've done on the channel where I've not actually been happy with the outcome. I have rushed the scenic work, but to be fair, until I get the other products, this is probably as far as I would have taken it anyway. Because I am unhappy with it, I'm not going to touch the layout itself for a couple of weeks now until I come up with a plan to improve it. There's no point pushing on with the scenery if this part doesn't fit. So instead, I'll build some more rolling stock. Thanks for watching, but please avert your eyes until I learn how to model clumps of moss better. Cheers.